Creating a Standards Aligned Local Assessment webinar. This is Karen Motzo, and I'll be taking your questions in the control panel to the right-hand side. I'll be monitoring them. Attendees are on mute, but you can also ask to be unmuted as needed. And if you have any questions, please, I welcome them, and we'll get started. Let me know if you can't hear or if you can't see my screen. So today's goals. We're going to learn a little bit about content library in Performance Plus and how it can help you to create assessments, both paper assessments and then assessments that you would administer inside Performance Plus where the data would be held there. I will also show you how to upload your data once you have it. You will probably not walk away today feeling 150% competent in this process, but this is a bit of a taster. And if you decide that you want to go ahead and create local assessments in Performance Plus where the data is held in the tool itself, then I can arrange a virtual meeting with you or an in-person meeting with you and help you through that. So we're going to learn about content library and the questions that are in Performance Plus. We're going to create an assessment with these questions, and we are going to see what it's like to collect and view the results in Performance Plus. So first we'll talk about why we create local standards aligned assessments, and then I'm going to move you through the process of creating a math assessment and an ELA assessment. I'll show you the format of uploading data into the tool, and then we can talk about what's next and getting more training. So I'm hoping that everyone knows how to log into the Performance Plus website. I'm going to show you real quick. This is the homepage for Performance Plus. And I'll just come over here and I'll open up a new window. So the address is my.doe.nh.gov. You log in through your single sign-on, which is the same place that you go to maintain your credential, your teaching credential. So mine is automatically saved, so I just pop that in there. And voila, there I am. And you see that I have several different access points to Performance Plus. And so as a teacher, you might have, it's always going to be affiliated, or teacher or administrator, it's going to be affiliated to your district, and you will not be able to see, or you won't have access to other districts' data except as it's associated to a student that may have been in your school recently and has then transferred. Okay. So then once you get here, right, you click in, and just going to turn that off. You can click in and you can see I have access to several different districts. Today I'm going to be using the system administration. So hopefully that takes you onto Performance Plus, and there are directions on our website as well, the Demonstrate Success website, to get in. We do have a resource page, which I am going to show you now. Our Performance Plus resources are on our website, and if you go to member login, you can log into our site, although these are public. So if you come over here to Performance Plus resources and you click view, then here you go. You have all sorts of saved webinars, historically the ones that we did from September till present, and any workshops and trainings. And then we have previously recorded webinars from last year, right? So basic reporting, analyzing SBAC data, data protocols, updating your student data in Performance Plus, and so on. So we have a lot of recorded webinars and anything that you might want to know how to do in Performance Plus. So going back to our PowerPoint. So why do we create a standards-aligned assessment or a local standards-aligned assessment? What happens often is that schools are using higher stakes national assessments such as STAR or NEWA or potentially even New Hampshire SAS, although the SAS is a little bit easier to break down and align with the standards that we're actually teaching in our classrooms. For all of those assessments, you cannot do an item analysis that will hone in on a specific standard or a cluster of standards. And so when we do work in schools, oftentimes we'll go in and folks have a lot of data. They're very rich in data. They have STAR assessment results. They have NEWA assessment results. They have the New Hampshire SAS. And those assessments have given them a really nice picture of student growth, right? So for the SAS, you can get student growth from one year to the next. From the NEWA and the STAR, you might get beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of the year, or beginning to end of the year overall growth. Oftentimes we use that assessment data to place students in certain classes or in certain interventions. And it's very valuable data, right? It norms kids against their peers nationally. But what we often find when we go into schools is that there's a lack of more granular common assessment data that teachers can actually bite into with their colleagues and look at to say, okay, across our third grade students, here are our power standards, or here are our priority standards that we're teaching at this particular moment, right, in this unit. How are our students doing, right? How did they start before we started the unit? Where were they? Mid-unit, where are they? Where are those students that are going to need more support as we move through the rest of the unit and beyond? And so a common assessment that's aligned to standards has the power to give teachers that information, individual teachers, but also and ideally teaching teams within grade levels or within department areas. So we are hoping that folks can leverage Performance Plus to create those targeted assessments. And so there's thousands of questions in Performance Plus that are aligned to standards that you can choose to ultimately create an assessment that will target the standards that you're working on at a given time. Just going to go into presentation mode. So Content Library organizes these questions. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to make locally standards, local aligned assessments, right? We use resources from books. There's resources that we can download from the internet. There's endless numbers of performance assessments, especially in math and somewhat in ELA, that we can download and use and tweak. What happens oftentimes is that folks are cutting and pasting and creating Word documents for assessments. The nice part about Content Library is that it organizes them by standards for you. And you can also then take the assessment that you've developed and have it inside the Performance Plus tool so that you can actually have the data in there to analyze the data more easily. And then you can analyze that data next to, right, the NEWA data or the STAR data or the New Hampshire SAS data that's already existing, and with all of the demographic filters that already exist in Performance Plus, which we've found over the years to be very, very useful. So there's two different, there's some of the language from Performance Plus that you may not be familiar with. An assessment framework and an assessment are basically, we're going to make those two separate points of conversation at this point. So an assessment is the actual assessment. An assessment can exist on paper, right? And you can get questions from Content Library that are standards aligned, and you can print, and I'll show you how to do this in a bit. You can print out those questions and give your students those questions via paper, and then collect them and grade them and score them and go through them the way you typically would. An assessment framework is a framework in Performance Plus that actually describes the assessment you've created, and it tells the computer about the layout of the assessment, like how many questions are in it, whether the questions are open-ended or close-ended, what standards those questions align to, so that it allows you to generate data that meets your needs. And then it holds the assessment data when you're done. Feel free to write in any questions that you have. It's great to have the assessment in Performance Plus and have that assessment framework, because then all your data is in one place. So if you have a third grade team who's all administering the same ELA assessment or math assessment for a given unit, right? It's automatically all in there if you've uploaded it. So that when it comes time to look at that data, there's no rifling through papers, there's no organizing, there's no, everybody coming to the table and having to merge their data together to have either a cross grade level or a vertical team conversation. The other nice thing is let's say you have a standards aligned performance assessment or benchmark assessment that you are administering from year to year, right? So if you have a standards aligned math benchmark assessment that you give sixth graders in the fall and then in the spring, something that reflects the curriculum the curriculum tool that you're using, but is aligned to Common Core standards, right? Then you can see that growth from one sixth grade year to the next sixth grade year to the next sixth grade year, which allows you as a sixth grade team to see what you're doing well and where your instruction needs improvement. The other thing is that when you create a standards aligned assessment, right, and you have it sitting out there as the assessment that a student or a group of students is going to take, it keeps you on track. You are teaching to the standards, you are assessing to the standards, and everyone stays accountable to that. And we have found that this sort of work, right, looking at that data to inform your instruction and how kids are doing when measuring these standards creates an improvement. We have seen that firsthand in the work that we do in schools. So this is just an example of a school that has been very successful in using Performance Plus in particular and creating local math benchmarks over a series of 3 or 4 years and administering those benchmarks, putting the data in Performance Plus, looking at that data in Performance Plus, and making a plan for reteaching, right? So this is a school that was involved in the data inquiry cycle at the grade level team, at the grade level team level. And you can see here that for this, each set of boxes is a year, right? And, whoops, sorry about that. And you can see steady growth at all grade levels. So each color band is a different, it's, I think it's 3rd through 5th or 4th, and each color band is a grade level. And you can see steady growth in that process over the years that they use these standards aligned local math assessments that they created and administered at regular intervals and reflected on, and then went back to redesign or revise their instruction. So we're pretty passionate about this model. of leveraging local assessments that are aligned to the standards that you're teaching to, or the explicit targets or competencies even, and getting into a cycle of reflection, reteaching, revision, reflection, reteaching, revision. Be it in the core instruction setting or in a tiered intervention setting where you have some intervention in your core instruction in response to the data. You have a tier 2 intervention and a tier 3 intervention. And that's all part of the work that we do from this. But right now we're just talking about standards aligned assessment. So when you're creating a standards aligned assessment, right, you need to go into your unit, into your grade level standards for whatever discipline you're working in. And you really need to identify what are the standards within this unit or this period of teaching or this module, right, that I need students to show mastery of, right? What are the goals? So you choose those standards that you intend to assess as proof of successful learning and effective teaching. And then it's very important that you understand the standards that you're assessing and what are the behaviors that you want to see students doing. How will, the question of, okay, we have these standards as a grade level team. These are the standards we want to assess. How will we know? What is the level 3? What is the mastery? What does mastery of these standards look like? And then from there, you're in a much stronger position to go and identify items or tasks, right, that demand that level of mastery for those specific standards. But the first 2 steps are super important. The better you understand as a team and have those conversations about what mastery looks like of the standards that you're assessing, that you want students to master, the better able you will be able to choose items or tasks that will really reveal student learning. Because without that, your data is not going to be good. All right, so we're going to actually go into Performance Plus, and I'm going to show you the process of once I've chosen my standards, which here we're going to start with NF for grade level 4, NF1 and NF2, okay? And I'm going to go in and we're going to log in and I'm going to show you how to start this process. So I'm going to end the show and I'm going to go into Performance Plus. So once you're into Performance Plus, here you are at the home page. And you're going to have we have an NF1 and NF2 for grade 4. So I'm going to go into, this is Content Library. Right? This is the reporting icon that we can generate reports on the data that we put in. This is the place, one of the places we might go to create an assessment framework. But before we do anything, we're going to go into Content Library. And hold on one second. I'm getting tired of that. Okay, no more emails. So while we're here, I'm going to clear my selected questions so I can do this over again, although maybe not. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to say grade level, 4th grade. Actually, I am going to clear my selected questions. Grade level is 4th grade, and I'm going to go into math. And now we see the standards. Whoops. I'm going to say show content standards. So don't forget to show content standards or else you'll get either nothing or the wrong set. So we have 4th grade math standards here. And I can go through and I want you to look on the right-hand side here where it says NBR and QUESS. I can't tell you how many times I've had people ask me, what does NBR mean? And I totally understand because it was a question of mine, I think, 10 years ago when I was learning how to use the tool. So don't be shy about that. But I'm going to explain that it's the number of questions available for a given standard, right? So we can come down here and we see, here we are at our numbers and operations fractions standards. And we see grade 4, numbers and operations, fractions, number 1 and number 2, because that's what we said we were going to focus our assessment on. And traveling across the page, you can see that there are 72 questions for the first standard and 64 questions for the second standard. So now that I've picked the standards, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom and I'm going to say show questions. And now you see dozens and dozens and dozens of questions. One thing that's really good to do is the display up here. I'm actually going to change that. I'd like to see 100 questions at a time. That way it allows me to scroll through and collect questions without changing pages. Okay. So now you see in purple here that the standard itself is listed, and everything under that purple line refers to this standard, right? NF A1. So your job as an assessment creator is to think about how many items you want, right, to assess a particular standard, and what's the function or the purpose of your assessment. So if this is going to be a standards aligned assessment that is functioning within a 6-week unit maybe, or a 7-week unit, then you probably are not assessing more than a couple of standards, right? And I would say that you would need at least 4 or 5 questions per standard, and you would try to get varied difficulty. So if you travel across the page to the right-hand side here, to this box, it talks about some of the stats on each question. These questions come from released assessments from different states. So these first couple of questions happen to be from Pennsylvania. We have lots of questions from Massachusetts. We have questions from the NECAP. We have questions from New York. We have some questions from like Engage New York, which are more recent, which will probably be higher order thinking. There are closed-ended questions and there are open-ended questions. I do find that for math, frequently there's more multiple choice questions, and the knowledge level is often listed, not always, but like for instance, for this particular question, which fraction is equivalent to 3/4? So here we have, if we go across for knowledge level, it says skills and concepts, DOK2, and the same with the second one, DOK2. It says that difficulty level, this is, Performance Plus has designated this as easy, and the second one for difficulty level, it's designated as medium, okay? Now, I would advise you to take those question details and take those labels into your, with a grain of salt, and do not forget as a team to evaluate your questions along your own criteria, right? What is a DOK2 for you, right? I am not sure that this meets DOK2 level, although it's not just a recalling information, right? It goes beyond that. So maybe this is, but as a 3rd grade math specialist or a 6th grade, I don't mean math specialist, but as a 3rd grade math teacher or a 7th grade math teacher, right? And as a team, you are highly qualified to look at these different questions and make those decisions around what DOK you feel those questions are meeting. So let me just check and see if there's any questions here. Nope. Right. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to choose these first 2 questions for my assessment. Let's keep going and look at a few of them. So we can see here that there's somewhere in the world, CREC. Not sure where that's from. It's looking like a state exam or a formal exam of some type, but you can see that it's more multiple choice. It's not talking about knowledge level and difficulty level, so those questions are not evaluated. Just to keep going down, we see a few more. Here's one from Engage New York. Okay, and this is an open-ended question. And you can view the items. So for instance, for this particular open-ended question, we can come over here and we can actually view the item. Fill in the circles below with a less than, equal to, or greater than to make true number sentences. Use decomposition or multiplication to justify your answer. So here, right, you're being asked to respond and then justify your answer and show your communication in math. And now what's nice about that is you're starting to, with that open-ended question and the justification piece, you're working your way into DOK2 and DOK3. So now I've run into a spinning wheel. Now it's gone. So I've just chosen that question, and I'll just choose one more. So there's a few of those from Engage New York, and many of those Engage New York questions are open-ended. So maybe we'll try this one. There's another cool one. Amashi wants to display a postman and Viceroy side by side in a photo box with width of 6 inches. Will these two butterflies fit? Explain how you know. Okay. So now we have a handful of questions, and you can see in the upper right corner, whoops. You can see in the upper right corner that we have 5 questions checked, and they travel once you check them, right? They travel across the page, and they become part of this little bucket in the upper right corner, and it says Add. So I'm going to click Add, and here I have the list of questions that I have chosen to include in my assessment. Now, just to address the this yellow, right? So it says, warning, 6 questions are not part of the New Hampshire Approved Catalog. That just means that they are not kneecap questions, and that's fine. It's not a problem that they're not kneecap questions. So from here, I'm going to come down and I'm going to show you right now how to create a paper assessment from this. So you can, by the way, if you want to reorder the questions, you can do that here in these boxes next to the questions, right? So right now we have them in the order that they were chosen. But if I want to switch this and make that 2 and make that 3, then that's good. And if I wanted to, let's say, even get rid of one. Let's say I like the butterflies one. I'm going to get rid of number 4. And then I can just click reorder. Okay, so then I'm going to have to go to number 4. Sorry about that, and remove selected. Are you sure you want to? Yes, I am. So you can play with it before you print it out, but then once you print it out, you can also play with it. So I'm going to go down here where it says there's a few different options here, right? So if you want to generate an answer key, that's where you would generate your answer key. To create a framework directly, as opposed to creating the paper copy right now, we could do that, and I'll show you how to do that in a little bit later on in the webinar. And this over here where it says Add to Catalog, this is kind of cool because you can create a catalog of questions. So I'm going to say these are my NF1 assessment questions, and now I have them in a catalog. And when I go back, I'll show you how to find that. So now I have them in a catalog, I have them saved. Now I'm going to try to create my print ready actual assessment for kids that I can give to them. So I chose print copy ready, and then at the top here it says I can redisplay. This is for ELA with reading passages. You can change the location of the passages relative to the questions. but for this, I'm going to say print RTF, and you're going to come up with these 3 boxes. And most always, you will use download Word JPage right here, the RTF Word option. Now, it will come out automatically looking like this, and it's a document that you can now work into. So numbers, right? Numbers and fractions, assessment, right? Name, and so on. Now, this is currently in RTF. Something else you can do is you can copy it. Okay, so I'm going to edit. I'm going to, I don't know why I can't copy. I'm going to copy the whole thing. And then I'm going to open up a Word doc. And I can paste special, right? And I can take away the formatting, okay? And now you have, you've done away with some of the, some of the different formatting from the RTF, right? So I'm going to close that. So those, now you have a document that you can work with and make it pretty for your students. The other thing you can do here is you can add questions from anywhere, right? So this is a reading passage that, okay, so this is interesting. The other thing that, I'm going to download it again. Well, actually, I'll show you this. Sometimes when you download onto a computer that's not a Mac, you will not have an issue, and all of your passages and your images will be downloaded. So when you're on a Mac, I'm going to do this again for a second, and I'm going to download. And instead of using this version, I'm going to go into my downloads, and I am going to open this in my Finder. And if you're working with a Mac, you might want to write this down. I'm going to show in Finder, and then I'm going to open it with Microsoft Word. And that is how you can get your reading passages and your images. So now you can see that here is the image that was attached to that particular question. Okay. So just to review, if you're using a computer that currently, right, we're going to work on this in, I think it's going to be corrected in Performance Plus, but currently, if you're working on a Mac, right, you want to download it into your Finder. You want to download it into your Finder and then open it as a Word document. Okay. So, questions? Around this. All right, I'm going to close the pop-up window. And here we are back at Performance Plus. And I'm actually going to go back out again to the content library. I just need to bring up my control panel for a sec so I can see if there's questions that. Okay. All right, so I'm going to show you right now. I'm going to go back to Content Library, and I want to show you where we have at the bottom advanced search criteria. So when you open up, this is what you see when you go back and directly into Content Library, and you see here advanced search criteria, because I want to show you where we have that library that we created. Right here is where we have catalogs, Okay. And this is also a way for you to search for questions that are different difficulty levels or a different level of knowledge, although, or different DOK. But what I want to emphasize to you is that, as we saw earlier, not all items are matched to a difficulty level, and not all items are matched to a DOK level. So I would be careful about using those filters. I would probably not use any of those filters. However, we did create that lovely catalog earlier, and I just wanted to show you that you can bring up, so here's catalogs that we've created in the past, right? And here's the NF assessment questions catalog that we created earlier. And if you put in to bring up the questions for that catalog, and then you say show questions, it brings you right to the questions that you chose. Okay. So that is how to create a math assessment that you can hand to your students, right? And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the ELA arena a little bit and show you how to create an assessment with reading passages, and then also what will happen if you go to make an assessment framework. So I'm going to go back out to Content Library. And I'm going to actually clear those questions that we chose. And I am going to go to English Language Arts and ask for those content standards. So here we have fourth grade ELA, and I'm going to go down into informational text. And I'm just going to choose the first couple standards. And if I look across, there's 248 questions and 128 questions. And I'm going to go down to the bottom again, and I'm going to ask to show me questions. No questions found. Let's go back. Why would that be? English Language Arts. Let's try again. All right, so we have the National Common Core Standards. We have fourth grade. We have English Language Arts. Okay. I'm just going to do this again, show content standards. And I'm going to uncheck and check again. And let's see. Oh, you know why that happened? Because I still have the catalog up. So it's only going to show me, as long as I have that filter in there for the advanced filters, it only wants to show me those numbers and fractions, those fractions standards and questions. So I took that away, and now I'm going to go to show questions. And here we have a gabillion English Language Arts items for reading for informational text, standards 1 and 2. And I'm going to come over here and ask for 100 questions. You must select at least one question, continue, close. Okay, so now I'll be able to view 100 questions at a time. So now you can see some of these language arts questions. And if we start to go through them, you see that for all of these, right, there is a particular reading passage for most of them that the question is affiliated to. So we can come over here and we can view the passage. And if we like the passage, the beautiful thing about this is that you can actually find all of the questions that are affiliated to a given passage. So, you know, I really like this passage. I think it's exciting. I think the kids will think it's cool. And if I scroll down here, if I look and I see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 questions that are affiliated to this passage that are RI 4.1, which is one of the standards that I'm looking for, and RI 4.2, which is another standard that I'm looking for. And if I wanted to take this opportunity to assess 4.4 and 4.5, right, the standards are down there. So I'm actually going to copy the reading passage ID. Because in a little bit, and if I were you when I'm doing this, I would sit with a pad of paper next to me and I would write down the reading passage ID or copy it the way I just did and keep it so that you can then go back and look for all of the questions that are affiliated to that passage. So I'm going to go through and, I really liked that passage and I see already 2 items that assess reading for informational text 1. We can go over to our question detail and the one beneath it as well. And is this the same passage? Nope, it's a new passage. So I'm going to choose these first 2 questions from a Club for Explorers. What else do I need to know? They're from Coventry. Don't know where that is, but it looked like a good passage, and I'll look at the questions. Let's see. Based on the information in the selection above, what is the international organization, the Explorers Club, dedicated to promoting? All right, so it's a text-dependent question, and it's not talking about knowledge level, but it says that it's a medium level, and I would assume from this question that if it's medium, that it's not sort of a right there sort of question, and that a student would have to at least sort of think and search and maybe synthesize information from the text. And then the next one, James Cameron is a member of the Explorers Club. Which evidence in the text best supports this conclusion? Okay. So that's supporting evidence from a text. And this is one way to assess this particular standard. Open-ended questions, I think that a well-worded multiple choice question can get at using evidence to support a claim, certainly. I also think that you would not want to declare a student masterful in that area unless they were actually able to do it in expressive writing, to take a passage and in a really applied situation to create a claim and support that claim, or to come to create a claim from a piece of text and then identify in the text where that claim is supported with a highlighter and with text annotation and so on and so forth. But I do think that an individual question like this that is multiple choice, that's well worded, can help to assess using information to support a claim or evidence to support a claim. Okay, we have about 15 more minutes, so I better keep going. So I'm going to keep going down and maybe choose I see that there's a few questions, the wild among us. I'm going to look at this particular passage. Oh, I like this one because it has a chart, so it's integrating some math skills and some chart interpretation. So I am going to do that one too. And I'm going to pick, ooh, things are disappearing like crazy. All right. Pick these 4. All right. So as you see that I have 4 questions, and I'm going to add them. And now we're back where we were before. And I can go ahead and I'm going to print RTF ready. But before I do that, I'm kind of curious about some of the other questions affiliated to those passages. So before I actually create my assessment, I think what I would like to do is find all of the questions that are affiliated to that particular passage. So I'm going to go back to my home page at Content Library. And at the bottom of the home page, you can see right here, if I scroll all the way down, there's a place that says Find and Add Reading Passages. If I check that, I can actually take that passage ID number and put it in there. And if I, not for my reading passages, but if I click all reading passages, so I put in the passage ID, right, from the Explorers Club, and now I've asked for all reading passages, okay, that are affiliated to this ID. So I'm going to ask it to find it. And here is a Club for Explorers. I'm going to open it up. Here's the passage. And underneath there are all of the questions that are affiliated to that passage. Now, not all of these questions are assessing reading for informational text 1 and 2. But I'm telling you this because I want to show you how to leverage a passage to its capacity when you're creating an assessment. And you might be assessing more standards than even this. And you want to leverage the passages that you choose, because you certainly don't want to put more than a couple of passages in a given assessment. Okay, so now I've chosen those questions and I'm going to add it to my previously selected questions. So where before I had 4, now you can see that I've added all of those questions from the Explorers Club to my assessment. Now I feel ready to create my assessment. And I am going to go in and go to the print copy ready again. And go to my RTF version. Because I'm on a Mac, I'm going to download this, but I'm not going to use the form that it downloaded in. I'm going to instead open it up. And again, if you're not on a Mac, you can, it'll just open up directly into a usable format, a more usable format with the images. But if you're on a Mac, you're going to open it in your Finder, and then you're going to open with Word. All right, so now we have all of our images and our lovely passage. And after our passage, we have our questions for the Explorers Club. And again, I showed you earlier how you can cut and paste and take care of the lines and rework the document. Okay, so here we have the Wild Among Us passage and the affiliated questions there. Now, we have the passage twice here. So I would definitely, obviously you're going to cut and paste and clean up the document. Okay. I'm going to go get out of this pop-up window, and what I want to show you is I'm not going to have time to take you through creating the assessment framework, but I do want to start to show you what that would look like. So now I've created my assessment, and what I wanted before you're ready to create a, just going to get rid of that. Before you go ahead and work with your assessment, you are going to want to, just going to X that out. Ooh. You're going to want to make sure that you go through the assessment and you label the standards for each item that you have chosen. And I'm going to come over here and create an assessment framework. I'm going to go directly to that process and see what happens. All right. So this is the ELA assessment that I just created, and it's a new test, grade 4 ELA, and those are my 10 items. And we can see here, this is what an assessment framework looks like. And what Performance Plus will do for you is it'll organize your questions into sections by the standard. And it will create for you a rubric that will then allow you to put data in, and you can actually see, okay, if this student, my 3rd grade students, had 4 questions, each question was worth 1 point. So the best you can do for RI 4.1, for reading informational text 4.1, is a student proficient with distinction would be getting 4 points. A student that was proficient would be getting 3 points, and then 2 points, and then 0 to 1 questions correct would be substantially below proficient. So this tool, Performance Plus, will automatically generate this framework for you. Very rarely is it ready for use automatically. you would need to go in and start to, play with the framework a little bit. There's different ways to collect the data. You can collect the data via each item, okay, which is one way, or you can input the data and aggregate it into these sections. You can see here that there is a section for each standard that was assessed in the assessment that we created, right? So there were 2 questions for reading for informational text 4.4. There was 1 question for reading for informational text 4.5, and you can see it there. And then at the bottom, it provides for you a total. So what this has done, this assessment has automatically given each item a value of 1. So you can see that the highest that a student can get is 10, right? And they've created the total score for you. So if a student gets a 10, it's distinction between, 8 to 10, and then anything between 7 and 8 is proficient, and so on. However, you probably would want to go in and you might want to place a higher value on an open-ended question, right? Or a harder question. Instead of giving everything a value point of 1, right? If you had an open-ended question that was a DOK 3 in here, you wouldn't want that necessarily to have the same amount of value in the assessment as you would a multiple choice question with a DOK of 1. So the way that you would go back in, and we can do this together once you're at this stage, you can contact me. You go into a rubric setup, right? And then we would go back in and we would be able to, we can do whatever. This is a description of the standard. We can, describe the standard. We can leave it as it is. We can make this different point values. We can label things differently. We can order, and so on and so forth. If you want to change the point values, so I'm just going to save all sections for a second. You would go into question setup, which is another. And so here we have define questions, align questions to standards. And it has already, so we have 10 questions. Every question is aligned to standards, right? And the setup method that they've used already is they've aligned to generate sections based on standards, right? And if you would be able to upload your data sheet by items, and the tool would do all the calculations for you, and you would have your data. So it's a really good reason for creating these assessments in Performance Plus. And if you have an assessment that you've taken, let's say, 5 items from content library, but you have a 6th item on the assessment that you want to bring in, you can also actually put items into the system. You can upload your own items, and then they become part of your assessment. So that's possible as well. I did want to show you, so once you have this assessment framework, the way that you upload scores is via spreadsheet, and it's very easy, or teachers can go in and put their scores in. So the different ways that you do that is, one way is through, this is telling us that I can upload scores this way if I want to upload scores by sections as opposed to individual items. For now, I'm going to say okay. And you can see here that it's just a question of having a spreadsheet, and I'll show you what that spreadsheet looks like. It's a very super simple spreadsheet where you would have a student's SACID numbers, and then you would have for each section. So let's say this isn't completely matched to the assessment that I just created, but I was just trying to show you that if I was, one of my sections was reading for informational text 1. One of my sections was reading for informational text, 4, right? And one of my sections was writing, standard 9. So depending on, and if this was the total number of points that a student earned reading for informational text was 5, 3, 7, I could upload my scores that way, aligned to their SACID numbers. The other way is, I'll show you in a sec. The other way, oops, is also you can go in by student and bring up an individual student here, or you can go in through the teacher icon and bring up your class to hand upload scores. I'm just going to go back for a sec. I'm going to find the assessment that we just created, but first I'm going to go back to Content Library. So there's a lot of different ways to upload the data, and that we're going to have to save for another webinar because our time is coming to an end. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint just to make sure that I did not miss anything. Okay. So I think that in terms of what's next, we will have some more webinars coming up and to show you how to upload data into Performance Plus. And I would encourage you to go to our site and look at the different webinars over there. Let me bring that back up again. Here we go. So we have some previously recorded webinars here. This is one that's creating assessment frameworks in Performance Plus. So that will be very helpful for you if you want to go that route. And then over here we have and uploading and entering data into Performance Plus. So we have 2 saved webinars that can speak to that, and as well as we will probably have another live one later in the year. And I would encourage you to contact me at kmatso at karen.matso@demonstratedsuccess.com. And here is our information. There's Ann Mordecai, and then me in the middle, and then Mike Schwartz. And you should contact any of us if you need any help in this work, and we would love to come and help you with it. So take care, and thanks for attending the webinar. And we'll be in touch soon.